Meantime, Americans are dying from opioid drug overdoses daily. Now, the new Biden-Harris administration facing some backlash for canceling a Trump policy that was widely seen as a way to help save lives. Joining us to discuss is Derek Maltz, a former DEA agent in charge of special ops. Derek, thanks so much for coming on today. I think a lot of people might not be fully aware of this sort of policy that was set in place by the Trump administration, sort of allowing doctors to administer a certain drug that would really help with opioid addiction. Tell us a little bit about that Trump decision that now the Biden administration is not continuing on.
Well, the Trump administration clearly wanted to end some of the massive overdose deaths and the trends that we have been seeing for many years in the United States. And they came up with this process, talking to addiction specialists, where they could actually, waive some of the bureaucracy to be able to give these really sick people buprenorphine, which is a very important drug that helps with the opioid addiction. So at the end of the day, it's just typical Washington bureaucracy that, Trump was just trying to save lives, in my opinion. And so you could see now, like the senator from New Hampshire, she's coming out with these bipartisan legislation bills to be able to eliminate these requirements so people who need these drugs can get them. But we do have to be careful about actually overprescribing because we don't want people to get addicted. We need professional doctors that are treatment addiction doctors to be involved in the process with counseling and, have a comprehensive plan as opposed to just overprescribing pills. That got us in this problem when the corporate cartels just bombed America with, 100 billion pills in 9 years.
Well, Derek, I'm not sure if everyone fully understands the extent of this crisis that's happening in our nation right now. If you don't have a personal tie to potentially someone who's suffering from opioid addiction, you might not realize just how prevalent it is in our nation. Would you mind sort of explaining that to people?
Real simple. America has a national security crisis going on with opioids and methamphetamine and other drugs. We have China engaged with the Mexican cartels. They're sending in the massive amounts of methamphetamine in the ton quantities in America. Methamphetamine deaths are on the way up. Fentanyl and these overdose deaths. We had staggering report, 81,000 Americans died in a 12-month period, which was 10 people a day dying. Just look at San Francisco, right? 700 fatal overdoses last year. That was like 3 times more than COVID. And you don't even hear anybody in Congress talking about this. Nancy Pelosi's not talking about her constituents that are dying at record levels. So we do have a crisis. We have a border crisis, which is going to make things worse, especially with some of these policies. Open borders makes no sense from a health crisis situation and from a standpoint of national security. China is dominating in so many aspects of the drug crisis, and nobody in Washington, nobody in the mass media is talking about it. So thank you for caring about this important topic that impacts all Americans. It's not a political issue.
Well, thank you for coming on the program. Stand by if you don't mind. I want to bring in our panelist as well. Jack Kingston, I'll go to you. You previously served in Congress. Of course, part of that responsibility was to be aware of those in your district who were struggling and offering any sort of assistance to it. As Derek reminds us, of course, we're seeing this struggle happening to people living in San Francisco right now, and you're wondering where these elected leaders are when it comes to finding solutions to people living in these districts. Jack, what sort of advice would you give to these elected leaders right now, especially when we're learning that the Biden administration is potentially rolling back these Trump policies? I believe it was over potential legal concerns as to how it was implemented. But again, makes you wonder if they're offering a different solution to this problem.
And you know what's ironic about this, Emma? As a representative, you look for something that would be a nonpartisan issue, that's something that you could do that would be productive. This is an incredibly nonpartisan issue. You have one cartel from China, out of Wuhan of all places, Los Zhang, who is actually distributing drugs, fentanyl-based drugs, in 25 different countries, 35 states in America, it is now the #1 cause of opioid deaths. So here you could talk about, listen, we need to track this. We need to bust these cartels. We need to stop the commercialization. They go through shell companies, so you can follow the money. And then you really need to reassess, is the wall just about illegal immigration, or is it about drugs? And I think the case is there to say that this is about drug-related traffic, and we can do something about it. But I think there's a lot of common ground for Democrats and Republicans to come together and fight this deadly scourge.
Bipartisan solutions, got to find them. Derek Maltz joining us live on the program. Bobby, stick around. We'll get to you right after the break. Still more to get to here.
All right. Well, the push to make America